Welcome to Around Kitsap. We're in the BCAT studio today talking about Compassionate Friends. Do you know about this organization? It helps people that have lost children. A very strong chapter in Kitsap County. I'd like to introduce you to three people that are very involved in this group. First of all, Carolyn Topness. Carolyn is the facilitator of the group, and Carolyn comes to BCAT on an annual basis. That's how I got to know her. She puts the candle lighting on our BCAT bulletin board. So when Carolyn came in last November, I said, Carolyn, we need to talk about Compassionate Friends. We need to let people in our community know about it. So thank you for coming, Carolyn. Next to Carolyn Topness is Carol Clark. Carol is, I just met Carol today, but she's been involved with Compassionate Friends for probably 14 years, she thinks. And next to Carol is Pat Ryan. Pat's got a very familiar face in our community. Pat has been involved in Compassionate Friends for 25 years. About 25 years. So we're going to start with the way a Compassionate Friends meeting would start. So Carolyn, why don't you start for us?
Okay. In 2005, May 29th, I lost my son, Corey. And he was killed by a passenger train. And then, so I had to talk to other parents who knew that feeling. So that was one reason. And 5 months after I lost my son, I lost my niece, Miranda, by suicide. So that is what brought me and has continued to keep me in Compassionate Friends.
Mm-hmm. Carol?
In 1998, I lost my grandson, Dawson, dealing with his mother, my child, and helping my child, watching my child go through a horrendous situation. I got involved with not this group, but another group. And then in 2001, December 14th, I lost my daughter, Melanie. She had 3 little kids. She was killed. She was involved in a minor car accident up by Clahalia High School, secondary school. And she contacted that flesh-eating bacteria, and she was gone in a couple days. She left behind 3 little kids. Kaylee was 6.5 at the time. Dakin turned 2 a week after Melanie died, and Allie was only 6.5 months. So my loss is dealing with my grief plus the grief of my grandchildren without a mom.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Pat?
My daughter was only a few days old when she died, and that was in 1965. And I have to say that after all these years, I am not a grieving, bereaved parent, although there's always a missing piece in my life. I never had her home, but my home always had an empty chair. Mm-hmm. I got involved in the Compassionate Friends, not then because it didn't exist, but almost 20 years later. Mm. And it started in England in 1970, and it began when a very compassionate chaplain at a hospital was working with 2 families whose children were dying. And when one died and the other very close after, he introduced these 2 families and realized the strength and the healing and the help that they gave each other in their mutual grief. He started the first chapter in England, and it came to the United States in 1980, or that's very soon after. Our chapter was founded in 1980 by a couple who had lost their son. Mm-hmm. And it's been going ever since.
Mm-hmm. So in 1980, the chapter started in Kitsap. And Carolyn, give us a rough idea. How many people come to meetings? And I bet it changes all the time. Sometimes there might be
5 or 6, and sometimes there's 20 or so, and it depends on, sometimes we have a program, and if it's a special program like suicide, it affects a lot of people. That's usually we can plan on that being a very large group that comes.
Carolyn, when we started the show, you said that it was within days, or was it weeks after
2
you
weeks.
lost Corey? 2 weeks after.
There wasn't a meeting for 2 weeks. Yes.
But what was it that made you know about Compassionate Friends? How did
Well,
you find out?
In those days, I was sent a card, and this is the card I received from the Compassionate Friends of Kitsap County. Today, we aren't able to do that because it really seems hard to get information to mail to people. And then I was given this letter, and it told me that this was for bereaved families, for people that lost their children. And I just had to talk to somebody that had lost a child. I mean, I knew a couple people, my sister-in-law and my, but one person at church, and I just didn't know anybody. And I was like, oh, I'm going to that meeting because I have to know all the things that you go through are you're
not
crazy.
unique.
You think you're crazy,
Yeah.
and maybe I'm, but you find that you're not crazy,
You're not crazy.
and you learn things to help you get through the grieving process. And you meet neat friends too, so that helps.
Carol, what was it for you? I know you had lost first your grandchild and then your daughter, and your life was in upheaval.
Right, and then we had, I think, because Melanie's been gone almost 15 years now, so I think I went to a meeting not long after, but then we had some things that went on, which with parents losing children, a lot of times there are other things. They're tragic deaths, so there's courts and there's all kinds of other stuff that goes on. So we got kind of sidelined and did some other stuff, some stuff for our kids, the grandkids, and then I came back, and once I got back in, it was kind of like my grief had kind of like been put on a shelf, and in the outside world, it's hard for other people to understand, but when you come to a meeting, it's like the people there, it's like I'm right back where I started at, and so the journey begins anew, and it allows me a safe place to cry or to understand, and for other people to understand that crying is okay, and it's a place where every month someone says, I say my child's name, and someone else acknowledges my child. And sometimes in other homes, they don't get a chance to do that. We do at my house. I mean, my daughter is part of our family.
Yeah.
Just because she's gone. In fact, my one granddaughter asked me, Nana, why do you always talk about Melanie? And I said, just because she's gone, she's my daughter, doesn't mean she's not still part of our family.
Good.
So my grandkids, the other grandkids, and then she wrote me a note, Nana, I miss Aunt Melanie. She
Isn't
didn't.
that
She didn't
sweet?
know because she was only a year old. But
Yeah.
but you do. You bring. They're part of our family, and I think that's what Compassionate Friends allows us to do. Which in the past, it was kind of put on a shelf, and parents just had to put it away and get on with their lives.
Who can participate, Carol? Who can participate? Who can come to the Compassionate Friends meeting? Not that we want to exclude anyone, but Compassionate Friends is really geared towards who?
Well, anyone that's lost a child, and from any age, we have people that have come that have lost a son at 65 or a newborn. When you come to the meeting, we have a sign-in sheet which allows us for you to sign in and then sign so that we can send you the newsletter, and then we have a release that you can sign that allows us to put your child's name into our newsletter on their birth date and their death date. And then we all sit down, and sometimes we if we get there early, and there's always people that get there early, we can get a chance to sit and talk. If it's a huge group, we can break down into smaller groups, kind of group into losses like car accidents or suicide or whatever. We right, and homicide. We don't want children under 18 because some of the things, conversations come out aren't appropriate for children, and we don't really have. We keep trying to come up with a siblings group. There's a siblings writing in our newsletter, so there is a tap into that. But we don't really. It's more for adults. It's only for adults, and then it usually runs. We start at 7, and we try and start right at 7, and we go till 9, and we end our meeting. We start out with, like we did, we introduce our children, and then we light our candle, and then we tell a little bit of our story, and then at the end we all turn out our candles.
No more blowing out candles.
Right.
Just turn them off.
And then at 9 o'clock we end the meeting. So that doesn't mean we don't leave the parking lot till 10 or 10:30, but or agree to meet with someone that you've connected with that night.
Exactly. Go to lunch. Go for a walk.
Scrapbook. We've scrapbook pages.
Nice. The newsletter, Pat, is a big lifeline. Some people want only the newsletter. It's their lifeline. Maybe they're not ready for a meeting, but to get the newsletter is really important to them. Talk about the newsletter a little bit, Pat.
I'm so glad you asked about that. The newsletter is really a lifeline for a lot of people. We have, I was just looking at some names earlier. We have people who have lost children years and years ago. And we ask occasionally, would you like to stop the newsletter? It's been so long. No, I need it. They're very well done. Our newsletter editor actually lives in Florida at the time.
Wow.
So distance is removed when you have something in front of you to read. It's done electronically, which has really helped our very limited budget to be able to send them out this way. And they're always very insightful and try to cover various kinds of grief. Oftentimes there's a review of the previous meeting for the benefit of those who couldn't attend, and a teaser for the next for those who might.
Nice.
And there, as was mentioned, there is a sibling contact, a sibling article in here every month, and as Carol has family that can benefit by that, and the newsletter is interactive in that Susanna, our editor, solicits articles from parents who would like to submit a poem, and there's a contact in there, and it tells who other contacts are to call if you want to talk, and it's alive.
That's great. That's great. There are some events that Compassionate Friends holds annually, 2 to be exact, but the meetings themselves sound like pretty fun events. Fun and sad. So the first one that's held is a picnic in Brownsville. Pat, talk to us about that.
We started a picnic a long time ago, and frankly, I wouldn't even go to them because I thought, how can you go to a picnic if you're grieving? Picnics are supposed to be fun. So I will say this is the first fun thing that we actually do. And it is so uplifting. It's potluck, and for the last several years, Carolyn has gotten flowers for people to toss, so they don't even have to bring flowers. But during the potluck, there's family interaction. You know, it's just a regular chance to get to know each other and also to talk about other things besides grief. And then when we're talked out and we've eaten, then I think you usually lead the group down to the water, don't you?
Well, sometimes, yes.
Well, why don't you talk about that? Because I stay behind and guard the purses.
I was going
going to also say that I enjoy getting to meet the children that get to come for this event. So that's kind of fun too. We get to see whole families and husbands come and stuff. And then we all go down to the waterfront, and then and everybody, usually there's plenty of flowers. Costco has donated me, I've gotten a gift card from them, so I'm able to buy some roses and some pop or something because of that. And so anyway, the kids, you can take more than one, and of course the kids, if there's any left over, they all want an extra one to throw into the water. But we get down there and we just take a time to kind of reflect, and then once everybody's tossed their the roses into the water, it's just, we just watch them float down, and it's really a wonderful kind of experience, I feel like.
It's very serene, isn't it?
To do that. And
Some people peel off all the petals and put them in one at a time. But
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, so it's kind of fun.
And then how I met Carolyn is the candle lighting that happens annually in December. Tell us about that,
It
Carolyn.
is the second Sunday in December, and that's an international event that happens around the world, so that the lights are shining around the world for our children. And it just is a time to really honor our kids in the winter time. They aren't there with us, and it's a hard time, all the holiday things that go on and stuff. And to me, this is my for me, this Corey Day, but and I get to honor my Corey, and we bring pictures. We have memory tables where you can bring your pictures and of your children, and we all get to see your children. And then also we've had a slideshow in the last couple of years that people can send in their slides of pictures of their children, and Doris Journay has been nice enough to make that slideshow possible for us during the event. And we play Alan Peterson's I Light This Candle for You, and when we're holding our candles and stuff. And it's just that song says, this candle shows that I love you. And you know, you just want to really make sure your child is seeing that candle. But it's really a special day and very meaningful. It's a pretty short program. And another thing that's been wonderful to do the candle lighting is my advisory board, which is made up of professionals from the community, have taken over speaking for me and reading little things. I choose everything. I spearhead it for them, but they have taken on the responsibility of helping with the refreshments and then doing the speaking and the reading and helping us go through the candle lighting so that everyone else may participate. And registering people has been a couple of my friends, and but the advisory board has really helped us with that, so that's wonderful.
Good. That's great. What keeps you attending? And before I go there, let's talk about running the group. You've been facilitator for how long now?
Since 2006.
Oh my.
Suzanne and I became co-facilitators.
Wow.
And so I've kind of been around for a while.
Yeah.
So we went to training. They sent us to training, to be leadership training in 2006. And then we just started doing the different things. And then when she left, then I had to take over. But yeah. And now I've got Carol involved with she takes over the meetings and I do the steering committee part.
Great.
And need more people to help us in that.
Right, right. So is it just a natural process? Somebody's in the group seems to be more interested and maybe they'd like to step up to a leadership role?
That would be good.
Yeah.
That would
May I
we
just
need
add
more
something to
volunteers.
that? Most people feel when they've lost a child that something good has to come out of it. It's a terrible loss, and maybe there's a reason for it. And we try, I think most people try to maybe live a better life because their child can't. And to make it easier for someone else to go through this terrible process is motivation for a lot of people to take on leadership roles and to stay with it.
Well, let's talk about where you can go if you're interested in Compassionate Friends. They meet in the lower level of Harrison Hospital in the Iris room.
That's Silverdale.
It's Silverdale.
Yeah, Harrison Silverdale.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Harrison Silverdale, lower level in the Iris room.
But sometimes, not necessarily Iris. One of the 3 rooms right there.
Okay,
'Cause
there's 3 rooms down in the lower level,
Right.
and Compassionate Friends is in one of them.
usually the Iris room, but that would be
Sometimes
the
they-
meeting you would show up and
And then you're down the hall
Right.
at some other
Yes,
room.
yes.
It is the 3rd Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. If you need information, like them on Facebook. If you want to talk directly to Carolyn and get the information, her phone number is on the screen. I want to hear about the snowflakes. As you see, Carol has, well, I noticed her fingernails, she's got a necklace, she's got the earrings. What's the significance of the snowflake?
My daughter had decorated for Christmas that year by the 12th of December, which anybody that knew her was phenomenal. She was going to have Christmas at her house. She was going to do dinner and everything. So she had, by the time she died, already decorated her whole house, was all decorated with snowflakes that year. So it just kind of picked up. My oldest daughter picked up a bunch of snowflakes, and we started on our snowflake day, which is the day what we call the day my daughter died. And we give snowflakes to everyone that comes. And so it's like any other collection, and we have people, and you find that when your child died, there's something that will appear, whether it be pennies, owls, I'm not quite sure what yours is, pennies, butterflies, different things that you see that, whether you believe it or not, that your child is nudging you and saying, you know, here I am.
Yeah,
I'm here.
yeah, that's
So
really
that's
neat.
that's our snowflakes.
Yeah, that's really neat. Pat, or excuse me, Carolyn, I'm going to ask you to close. I think we've talked about everything we need to. And
Okay.
we just want to make sure people know when the meeting is. Go to Facebook for information. Carolyn's phone number is on the screen. If you have lost a child, or more important maybe, if you know someone who has lost a child at any age, this might be something that is really beneficial to them.
Could I just interject one comment, and that is, a lot of people think that because it happened a long time ago, that they don't need compassionate friends. But if they never had an outlet, if they're always holding in their grief, if there's nobody in the family they can talk to and their friends are tired of hearing about it, the Compassionate Friends is an outlet. And many times people are expressing grief for the first time, and it is a genuine gift to be able to release
Right.
it.
Sometimes,
Well said.
and sometimes it's like 8 years before people come, and for you it was 20 even. But I also want to say that on the national website is links to many many things that would fields that would suit each person's loss. So that's a really good website to go to.
Good.
If you
And that's
really,
the national website.
yes, the
And,
national
we'll have that link on the
the
screen as
Compassionate
well.
Friends. Yes. Okay.
Great. Before we go today, I want to thank you all. First of all, Carolyn, thanks for getting this together
And
for
thanks
us.
for having us, Charlene. I appreciate that.
Well, it's important information, and there are many, many people in our community, I think, that don't know, that need to know.
yes.
And it could help many, many people.
Thank
So I
you.
want to thank you for joining us, and we're going to let Carolyn read something that is significant to her, and we'll close with that. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Lament for a son, and I think this could be for a daughter, but there's a hole in the world now, in the place where he was. There's now just nothing, a center like no other, of memory and hope and knowledge and affection, which once inhabited this earth, is gone. Only a gap remains, a perspective on this world, unique in this world, which once moved about within this world has been rubbed out. Only a void is left. There's nobody now who saw just what he saw, knows what he knew, remember what he remembered, loves what he loved, A person, an irreplaceable person, is gone. Never again will anyone inhabit the world the way he did or she did. The questions I have can never now get answers. The world is emptier. My son is gone, or my daughter. Only a hole remains, a void, a gap, never to be filled. And that's by Nicholas Walter Hoff.